you to, kick us off here with why it's important to embrace vulnerability.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And this actually came out of last year's keynote that you and I did because I started hearing and you started hearing from a lot of people and I started digging into, people were saying things like, wow, it's just, so cool that you can share your story like that and so cool that you can, talk openly about this. And I'm like, it just seemed normal to be. And I'm like, okay, what is this? What does that mean that we're doing this? What is there a definition for that? And it just kept coming to vulnerability. And vulnerability to some people may sound like, oh, I've got to be so open. I'm so afraid to do that. I can't share these intimate things about me. The power of vulnerability. And we also, when we hear vulnerability, we think, well, if I'm vulnerable, it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign that I'm admitting that I'm not perfect, that I'm doing something wrong. And honestly, that alone, the ability to do that is like a superpower. That just opens up so much to everybody that's involved with whatever situation you're in, whether it's a business, whether it's a family, whether it's a transaction, buying a new computer, whatever it is. There's vulnerability just has such a positive impact. So I started digging deeper into it after last year's session to see, what is it and why is it? What's the impact of this? Is it a sign of weakness? And I'm going to go on a rant for a little bit here, Brady, if you don't mind, but. And so I've started reading some books on it. There was a few different books. One by Jacob Morgan, which I would highly recommend. And it's actually just called Leading with Vulnerability. Really good book. But in there from Jacob, I got a definition of what vulnerable leadership is. And so he, I think, did a really nice definition because when you think about vulnerable leadership, it's like, okay, does this mean I just have to be in the office and cry all the time? Or does this mean I mean, what does it mean? And so vulnerability and vulnerable leadership are a little bit different. If you're vulnerable, what you do is you admit you made a mistake. I mean, that's vulnerable. That's hard for some people to do. But when you turn that into vulnerable leadership, it's I made this mistake. Here's what I learned from it. Or I made this mistake. I can't fix it. I need your help. There you're going from I'm just vulnerable. Hey, I made a mistake, or I made an error, or I don't understand this, or I don't know how, whatever it is. And going for that next step, not just, hey, here's my vulnerability, but here's my, and he calls it V plus L equals VL. Vulnerability plus leadership equals vulnerable leadership. And I kind of like that. We're accountants. We kind of like maths and Excel spreadsheets. You can put this in a spreadsheet. And so I started digging into it, and this is what came out of it. And I'm like, okay, yes, I can see that. But now what's the impact of that? Okay, now I know what vulnerable leadership means. What's the impact of that then? And so then I started researching studies out there, and there's plenty of studies that show you the impact of what vulnerable leadership does. And I'm going to quote a couple, and then we can see where you want to go after that. But there was one from, I think one was from Gallup, one was from Harvard, one was from American Psychology Association, one was from a university. But these 4 different studies, one showed that when vulnerable leadership is part of an organization, employee engagement goes up by 25%. So that alone, when we're going into tax season and we have more engagement from the people we're working with, right, that alone is like, okay, done. You've sold me. But it even gets even better, I guess, if that's a way to put it. Organizations that display vulnerable leadership are 30% more innovative and creative. And so when we talk about innovation and creativity, we are in, and this, we're in a tech revolution with what's happening in accounting right now. That's innovation. That's creativity. We also, as practitioners, have to figure out how to integrate that in what we're doing. If we are afraid to make mistakes, if we're afraid to say, I did something wrong, there's no vulnerability. That creativity, that innovation isn't there. If you aren't creative and innovative, you're flatline at best and probably, sinking from a standpoint you're going to get passed by I'll go for two more, and then I feel like I'm taking all your time, Brady. Two more,
Very good.
and then it's back to you. There's another study out there that shows that employee resilience goes up by, I think it was 40%. I have the slide over here, 40% when there's vulnerable leadership. Employee resilience. Again, we're going into tax season, and if it's okay for me to admit I'm a little burnt out, that's going to help with my resilience. That's going to help with other people. If I'm not afraid to say that, resiliency in employees goes up significantly. And then the last one is trust levels.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest one. But if I am working for a vulnerable leader and I trust that person, I mean, that alone is going to be huge. And so it shows there's different stats out there, but some study shows as high as 60% increase in trust levels when there's vulnerable leadership. And I can actually see it being even higher than that. So those are the things that I really started digging into after last year's keynote that we did. And it's really shaped how I've been out speaking this past year and really cool things. And it's really turned into a lot of really interesting discussions.
I